My name is Joe Woodham. Welcome to All Things Design, the podcast that unpacks how design drives digital transformations. Today, we're speaking with Siray Li, Product Design Chapter Lead at Medibank. Siray, it's a pleasure to speak with you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Joe. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Cool. Ready to jump straight into it and unpack your topic, boosting efficiency in the design process. Where did you want to start?
Yeah, it's definitely a hairy topic. In terms of the whole story, I want to start with in the very beginning, that the reason for us to go to, design process and look into design process. And as we all kind of aware, after COVID, every company start to be more digital. We're trying to have more stronger digital presence for people. We are kind of boosting our strategic focus across each and every industry in the company. And that's where our design team, as well as digital team, kind of growing rapidly and throughout the years within the company. And then as soon as we start growing, we realize that it's very hard to maintain that cohesive and consistent design output across the team, as well as maintain that efficiency, because you have a lot of people, a lot more designers coming in, overlapping on each other and trying to also create something innovative and creative. And that really got us to think, okay, what benchmark do we want the design output to be? Do we need some structure? And also, we also coming from different backgrounds, having a variety of design skills. And how do we help the designers to grow and to actually come to realize and pick up the things that they usually miss during the design process? And that's why we kind of start thinking, okay, we need a refreshed design process to grow our designers and also to achieve that business and people success across digital. And that's the story, how the story begins with the design process. So basically, we have two pain points. If we look at this from a design, like as a design project, and the first pain point is to help designers to grow. A second pain point is to really boost that efficiency across the team and for the business.
I love it. It's straight into it. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that even just that introduction, there was so many things that I could veer this in. It's like COVID and digital transformations has been probably the most common word used off the back of that. Most people ended up doing it off the back of a necessity and the market changing. But I think getting that cohesion in a team and the efficiency there is like just a quick question is like, how do you maintain innovation and a sense of personality with each designer and put a design system in place that everyone kind of can align to and follow as a business? Is that
yeah.
jumping
Well,
ahead too far?
no. That's a perfect question. I'm really glad you asked how, because that's what I'm thinking to talk about as well. So yeah, we've got the pain points, right? That two pain points we need to solve, and we actually been through a few iterations and attempts. So I think like a lot of design teams, we started with our very classic visualization of design process, which is the double diamonds. That's very classic. Everyone can recognize it. We start having that as something as a blueprint for the team to follow. We go like, okay, you go divergent first, and then you go convergent. You define the problems first, and then you define the solutions. So don't jump the gun. And there are a list of activities and process you can follow along the process. And very soon after we actually have the team to trial with this type of approach, we find that that's actually being too loose for everyone to follow, because it gives that directions, it gives that clarity, but doesn't really give that practical suggestions or anything to benchmark against or any governance point for us to align. So that's the first attempt kind of being a kind of failure. And after that, soon we kind of go to a different approach, which is a totally opposite way, where we look at the design process as a list of sequential tasks. So we kind of clearly identify, okay, this is where you actually ask whys after you see your problem statements, and then you go to different data analytics, go to your different generative research, and blah, blah, blah. That's a list of the process that you can go through. And with that definitely gives more rigor for people to follow, and people find it very helpful. But there are actually two problems that come out. from this kind of process. First one is it's being too rigid. It's not like every project can actually comply with the process, with something as simple as optimizing content on a web page. How can you, what do you need to generate research about? It's just too cumbersome for certain projects. And at the same time, we find that it kind of kills that creativity vibe among people.
Yeah.
And and you can certainly observe that from people's mood and emotions. Some of them just hate it. And they are actually kind of openly kind of discussing about how rigid and structured the process is, which is great. And with those type of feedback, then we realize that process is actually too structured. And that's not something we want to use as a box or something to lock the creativity, to kind of kill that kind of innovation within the team. So that's the second attempt, also failed. And when we went to the third one, which is using a phased approach from Google's design sprints or design thinking, that's also a very classic, well-known kind of framework across the industry, where you have different sprints, understand, I think, define and design. That one also failed miserably because it does give the structure, but it also have the similar problem of having that sequential design process where things can become very complex, very rigid to follow. So basically after 3 attempts, we realized maybe are we on the same track? Are we on the same directions? Are we really solving for the right problem? We kind of start thinking and discussing among the leads and also managers within the team and try to find which way should we go after the 3 failures. Yeah.
How many, like, you're also already gone through 3 iterations of this. How long is each iteration going? Like, are you running it in test, or are you actually getting the entire design team to start following this process and iterating it as you go? Like, how long does each
Yeah.
test go?
That's a really good question, because you need a certain period of time to really validate A/B testing or whatnot, experiment, whatnot, right? We actually learned our lesson. Our designers are very proactive to try new things. So how we usually run each test is we actually have a soft launch. It's not something mandatory everyone need to do, but we have this artifact there, this version of design process. Feel free to try in your project. Maybe 3 or 4 designers will opt in and they just happen to have the project starting, and they will have it going for the whole project. The project can go for like a month or 2 months, sometimes 2 weeks. And then usually we run for 1 to 2 months. And then after we feel we got enough feedback, usually enough negative feedback, then we realize, okay, something need to be changed here. But if everything goes well, we just let it run smoothly. And, as time goes along, more designers will be willing to jump in and also willing to adopt. And that become the whole team thing. Yeah, so that's how we usually run
I'm
experiments.
interested first, like you said that a lot of the leads and the managers come up with the strategy and like the idea of, all right, let's test this with the designers and see if this process is going to work. At the start of this, like with the designers all on board with, all right, let's go and test this, or like how did you, I guess, bring them on side to start testing these new processes or structures to help them? Like, did they buy into it at the start, or was it a slow process of going, hey, we're trying to do this to help you become more efficient or make this process a lot smoother and more efficient at the end of the day? Like, how did you manage that?
That's a very good question as well, because definitely not all of them are on board with it, which is great. I think that's because we have a diversity of designers coming from different backgrounds and having different perceptions of design process. But actually, it usually starts with ideas from 1 or 2 designers. They realize the pain point. They realize, okay, I did this thing which overlaps with theirs. We need to align, but we align too late in the process, which caused some of the rework, wasted effort, we don't like it. I think we should try this. Can we try this together? And they bring the ideas to the leads, and we kind of discuss and look at it together. Okay, that's perfect. Let's enhance it. And maybe you can start trying and bring the designers that are working closely with you together to try it. And then slowly, then we'll have that discussions with the wider team. And we definitely want to do it as a test and learn approach, because we want to make sure everyone is comfortable, because culture is actually a critical factor always in our leadership and our team structure as well. So definitely something collaborative and also a kind of iterative approach. That's how we approach things like design process. Yeah.
Do you find that this strengthened the culture because the team all understood what you're working towards? Like, I imagine there was friction along the way of people going, I don't enjoy this. This isn't working for me. But have you found that because of the communication and because you're taking on feedback and iterating and changing, is it actually bringing the team closer together to understand what the point of this is?
Definitely, definitely. Not only that, in terms of incorporating feedback and also hearing people's voice and recognizing it and also appreciate the voice. But also, if you observe some of the team's dynamic, you will realize that people are trying to solve for the problems themselves. A certain designer will actually come up with design process or different approach like meetings to try to align and also try to make sure whatever output we come up with have that cohesiveness and consistency. So if you actually be patient and also be open-minded enough to observe those small things, you realize the team is actually having a lot of awesome ideas to actually boost efficiency across the team. Design process is only one part of it, because you mentioned design language system as well, and that's a whole lot of topic by itself. We can observe designers trying different ways to align with each other and also to keep uplift the standard. And we can see even we have a design language system kind of in making, in progress, people will come in to say, okay, I think we should contribute this in this way. I'm not necessarily working on the design system full time, but as a feature designer, I can approach things this way to help that we are aligned, and then whatever the design components you come up with will be adopted very fastly and efficiently across my squad, my team as well. So yeah, to your point, hearing the feedback, hearing the voice, but also observing how people solve it naturally doing their project, doing their process is also very helpful.
Yeah. So you've spoken about 3 attempts so far and they haven't worked,
Yes.
but you've learned a lot, you've iterated. Where are you up to now?
Finally, something that worked, which is awesome. Which is also an idea from the team member, which it comes down to the 3690 design critique framework. I'm not sure if you heard of it, but it's actually a well-known design review from across the industry as well. So I know Atlassian is using it, for example, REA is using it. So one from our team member who previously worked in REA actually thought this is actually a great approach, a potential great framework, and he reckoned we should try it out. And so we did. And the reason we are willing to try it out is because looking back at our 2 pain points, what we want to solve with the design process. One is about governance. Another one is about educating designers, uplifting their capabilities. We realized that maybe we shouldn't try to use one solution for both of the pain points. Maybe we need to separate it. And if we separate it, that we can see very clearly that 3690 is a perfect one for that governance part. Because with 3690, it's basically sectioning the whole design process to 3 parts, 3 sections, as the design process or project goes along. At 30%, you are focusing on, okay, aligning for the design directions, highlighting any major risks or issues. And at 60%, you're looking more like a concepts, hi-fi design, lo-fi wireframes to make sure that the designers come up with something that can solve for the pain point. And lastly, 90%, that's where you're looking at the finished, polished kind of design spec, visual design, prototypes or whatnot. If we use this framework, we can see that It perfectly solved for that alignment or benchmarking or governance issue across the whole design process. Because firstly, at 30% mark, you are aligning with that direction, the concepting, that we are solving for the right problem. At 60-point part, we are solving for that alignment around visual design. Yeah, that's the one.
Just thought
The
I'd bring it up
framework.
so we can. I'll add this at the end so people can refer back to it. But I just thought I'd bring it up so people might know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, so I was talking about 30%. If you look at it, the outcome is align on the lo-fi, align on the design approach timeline, highlight major recent issues. That's your governing at a very early stage. And whatever feedback you have for those general directions, you can kind of feedback to the designers at this point of time. So it prevents any of the wasted effort, any of the rework that might happen later. And if you look at 60%, where we are actually aligning on high-fine the usage of design systems, and this will make sure that in terms of the solution or concept the designer comes up with, it will actually solve for the pain point. And lastly, we are actually aligning on the final kind of output, looking at the prototypes and making sure everyone is happy with the components, patterns, everything. So this one
No, I'm much
just
like
giving that, well, yeah.
Can't bring it up. Sorry.
Yeah, perfect, Yasumi. Yeah, this approach, what we realize is that it gives that 3 checkpoints across the design process, which is minimum effort, but bringing people in at right points of the time so they know what feedback to give, and designer knows what feedback to ask and receive and expect as well. This solves for that governance issue perfectly.
Okay. So, look, first
Yes.
of all, you had this idea came from one of your team members who'd worked at REA and brought it across. How has this gone with the team? Like, did people buy into it straight away? Was it a slow process to get them to understand how to use it? Like, what were the feedback loops that came out of this? Like, was there much negative, or was it more on the positive side, and that's why you've stuck with it? Like, what have you learned?
It's a very good follow-up question because we've also learned from our previous attempts. So this time we didn't go with like okay start running for like a few months of the trial experiment. Instead, we keep it very short. We keep like 2 weeks at the beginning for everyone to get to know the 3690, and we start with a workshop with everyone together. So with the workshop, what we trying to get is all the questions. So we've actually experimented with 3 process before, and you are very familiar with those process. And just from what you can see and understand from 3690, what are the questions? What are the challenges you can see? We encourage people to actually ask questions and bounce ideas within that workshop instead of having individual designer to kind of be stuck with a process and kind of trying to find ways to work around it by themselves. We bring people together, brainstorm together. So at the end of the session, we actually have a list of Q&As kind of created from everyone's experience, everyone's thoughts, and some of them will actually solve for it on the spot. And designers come in to jump in to share what they think we could use 3690 as a way to solve for it. And some of them we actually took it offline and took a bit more time, do more research, best industry practice and whatnot to kind of enhance and customize the 3690 for our usage, for our use case. Yeah, so I would say it's around after 3 weeks, we got the team to kind of agree on and trying it together. And so
Yep.
far, it's been 3 months. It's been 3 months. Everyone seems to be happy with it. Everyone seems to be on board. And it's not only designers, but also the non-design stakeholders. So the squad, the PMs, the IMs, the BA, and technical engineers, they're all on board with it. I think ultimately comes down to this is actually a very simple framework with a few terms that can help people talk in terms of the same language and to adopt very easily. So I think that's the key of the success. And also we customize to a degree that fits our process in general in digital. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously the topic going back to it is how you
Mm,
can boost efficiency within a design team. You've gone through 4 iterations. You've now got this one that you've tested for 3 months, and it is working, and the feedback's positive, which is nice. Like, have you
keep it working.
noticed the efficiency boost that this is adding from the design perspective? And can you talk me through that?
Definitely, definitely. Because as I mentioned, right, usually a project can take 1 month or 2 months. And what we measured against is because we keep iterating on a quote to join flow within the company, which makes sense because that's one of the most critical flow. Usually it takes 2 sprints, which is 1 month to finish discover to hand over to engineer to deliver. That's our usual time frame. But with this new process and framework, what we noticed is it actually shortened the whole design process to 1.5 sprints, which is around 3 weeks and bit. And then we're kind of thinking, okay, how can we kind of shorten the whole process for that 25%? That's a lot. That's
Yeah.
a huge increase in terms of efficiency. And then we realize it comes down to the number of meetings it helps to reduce. Because normally for a project like that, we need to engage design team, we need to engage people in digital squad, and also the non-digital business stakeholders. That could easily come to 10 to 12 meetings across the whole process to align on the concepts, wireframes, hi-fi design, final solutions. But because of the 3690, what we do is we realize at a certain point, we need to engage as many stakeholders as we could, and people are talking in the same language. So stakeholders coming in, they realize what to expect as well. So we actually shorten or reduce the meetings to around 5 to 6 across the whole process.
Wow. Look, who isn't happy with that, right? They go 12 meetings to
Exactly.
5 or 6 meetings. It's like, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
good
Yeah.
times.
That's I think whole that's why we kind of increase the efficiency or overall, because you then reduce that come back and forth, reduce that effort of, okay, this stakeholder said this, and then we need to circle back with that one which has the similar expertise. We bring people all together and we solve for it at one spot. And of course some people can't make it, and we have recordings, we also have room to update, but everyone is under the same mindset when it comes to feedback and reviewing the design, which is either concept, lo-fi, hi-fi, or polished final look. Yeah.
And you obviously talked about the rest of the team or the pod might be out there. They think the process is working as well. Can you talk me through how you implementing this from a design practice has helped you communicate this with maybe the project owner or the BA or the developers?
Yeah, it's actually really easy when actually in terms of the communicating, because what I have observed before is what's hard in terms of communication is when we actually use terms and languages that not universally accessible. Like if we're talking about, design specific language, like your design patterns, like your design language system, people will ask, what is design system? What is design language system? But when it comes to this framework, um, it's actually the language is actually very universally accessible. Everyone understands 3690, and everyone understands the concept, and also the low fidelity wireframes, and also the high fidelity design or visual or prototypes. Um, and I think that's one of the reasons it makes the communication very easy. And second reason is I think they all suffer from the same pain point as we do, which is when they want to give a feedback, designers can be, oh, sorry, it's too late. Or the designer can be, oh, I need to rework on this, which will increase the effort, will increase the estimate. So the squad is also trying to find the right spot to give the right feedback to make everyone's life more efficient. And this is what they are actually really willing to try as well.
Yeah.
And they feel like they're part of the team because we've brought them into the same reviewing process or reviewing meetings with the rest of the designers and design leads. They're very happy and also just jump in to kind of being very supportive along the whole process. I think that's another part of the reason why they are really acceptive when it comes to this framework. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mm.
obviously going through 3 iterations now onto this new framework, is there anything that you have fine-tuned to suit you or your squads, um, learnt from the previous 3 attempts? Like, is there anything that you've just customized to make it a little bit more you?
Yes. Yes, definitely. Because if you remember, I mentioned two pain points we want to solve with design process before. We solved for the efficiency part, and another part we want to solve is that education, that growth among the designers, that uplifting of the capabilities. And then we realized that with that, you need to enhance the design framework a bit more. 3690 was originally used as a critique framework because it kind of lists out way to provide your design critique, design feedback, but it doesn't have what comes in before and after that. It basically leave it very loose and open. And what we realize is in order to educate designers, we need to give them a list of toolboxes or list of toolkits they can draw from. They can understand those are the methods, those are the activities they can do, but they don't have to do it for their project. They only do it when they see relevant. So what we did is, if you look at artifact, which we will share, I guess, in the show notes later, is we have a list of things that listed out before and after each checkpoint. So before your 30% checkpoint, what might happen is your kickoff meeting with a squad. You might have problem statement from the business. You might have some analytics data. And this is your toolkit. And we have actually artifacts to kind of explain, okay, what each method can mean within the design process. So if designers is relevant, they can go through that artifact and just to understand, okay, what does it mean? What do I need to do here? For example, right? Maybe this pain point, actually, I need to go through the data analytics to actually validate if it's actually a real pain point. Or maybe I don't have enough data or insights for this pain point. Therefore, I need to do some generative research, invite some customers and users, and to do some moderate research, moderate interviews with them. So all those toolkits are listed out there before your 30 checkpoint. And similarly, before 60, we also have a list of toolkits. Things like you can look at design language systems, what patterns are already used there that you can borrow, and what is the contribution model to design language system you need to consider before coming up with your lo-fi wireframes. And we also have, best industry examples, research guidelines, etc., to help you to kind of generate that hi-fi design with a very high confidence. And lastly, it comes down to the 90% where we focus mainly on accessibility, inclusive design as well. What's your WCAG 2.2? What is your design, accessibility design annotation, template, tools? So we have all those as resources, and we have those kind of mapped into the 3690. And when designers need them, they can go there and can find them. But if they don't, they can just go along with their design process and just make sure they've got alignment at each checkpoint. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. It sounds like
Mm,
you've really worked it out. Because I think having the process there is great, but then having the toolkits at each stage of those process so people know where to go and find the right tools at the right time, and like the efficiency, I can understand where that comes from. You mentioned that two efficiencies so far, which is reducing by 25%, say a 4 week project down to 3 weeks, and then also 12 meetings down to like 5 or 6, which are huge efficiencies already. And I imagine that's a
mm.
huge business cost savings. Are there any other efficiencies that you've seen?
Yes, definitely. Another efficiency is about collaboration among the team, among the designers. which is maybe not that big in terms of profit or in terms of on the paper. But I think what it does is actually helps with that collaborative culture among the design team. Because what we noticed before, what we observed before is before the framework process, people they meet up ad hocly, and depends on if they are more an extroverted person or introverted person. They may choose to meet up with different ones and also have smaller or bigger meetings. They chat to designers less or more frequent. It depends on personality. But after design framework, because we have that checkpoint, so people have that either urgency or they have that reminder that they need to proactively go out and seek for feedback among the designers, not only just squad or design leads. So they do that more oftenly, and there's a bigger team members, a bigger team meetings, more team members involved, and because of that, it's more collaboration among every designers, and that's a culture shift that we've noticed. People have their voice kind of expressed out more oftenly and more willing to hear about others' voice as well. And
Like,
another thing we noticed
I was going to say, as much as you probably can't tie an ROI number to that, like I think overall increasing the culture and communication between a team is an incredible part of any process. Like if you can get that piece right, it drives the rest of the stuff. So I think that's a huge win.
Exactly. And also, one more thing we noticed is that sense of ownership among designers, which I can feel from my own point of view as well. Because if you give me a very strict process to follow, I feel like part of the ownership is taken away from me. But because of that framework only talks about, okay, when we meet up, when we align, when we give you feedback, it actually gives that autonomy and full sense of ownership back to the designer. And that kind of, I think, motivates people a lot more to kind of own the design and also think from the customer point of view and just embrace any of the feedback, any of the suggestions along the way more openly.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it still gives everyone autonomy in their role to make do things their way, but it also ties things back to accountability. Like you have certain um, windows where things need to happen at certain periods of time, so people are still held accountable to make sure things are getting done at the right time, so they can't delay them. So I think once again another efficiency there. Let's say
Absolutely.
I was an organization and I am trying to go through the process of finding something similar. Like obviously you've talked through some of the failures and you've talked through what works. Like this 30, 60, 90-day model, like how would you recommend an organization tests it or goes about trialing it?
Yeah, I think from my own experience and the story I've just told, it's very clearly that there are two ways, I think, or two lessons for everyone and also for myself to think about in my future leadership. First one is approach problems with your design thinking. What's the pain points you're trying to solve? It's something that you not only look at through your design project, but also when it comes down to leadership, when it comes down to helping the team, growing the designers, what the pain points you're trying to solve, really get to the bottom of it, not just to think about the solution mode or going to the solution too early, but really think, okay, what's the pain points and why we need to solve for it? Is it just one pain point or is actually a few pain points kind of bundled up together?
Yeah.
I think it's only when we actually realize we're trying to, okay, use one solution to fit for two boxes or two purposes that realize that one design process is not working. We need to have something different. Yeah. And that's one lesson. Yeah. I think the second lesson is around observe how the team members behave. And also, I think solutions will already kind of in the peoples who are doing it. They they are deep in the process. They understand everything. They also have been trying different workarounds and also collaborating with people to solve for it. So if I would say if any team leader wants to solve for a team level issues, they should ask the team and observe how they behave, how they're already acting, work around through it, and just to get some inspirations, because that way you also get the team's kind of support and collaboration very easily and very rapidly as well for whichever idea you come up with for the team.
Did you have a cadence that you followed from a communication standpoint? Let's say if you've got a project that was going to go 4 weeks, like how often were you checking in with the team to ensure that they were enjoying what they were doing, the new process was working, or you were getting the feedback at the right points?
Yeah. With the new design framework, design process, that's the 3690. That's where we align with the team member on the project. But besides that, right, we also have one-on-ones where I meet with my team members once every fortnight for at least 45 minutes. But that's not only talk about what's going on in work, but also what's going on in their personal life, in their career growth, anything that's relevant that we want to talk about that could happen within those 45 minutes. And those two meetings on 3690 and 1-1, those are something like we put into the whole design cadences, the team cadences that we do. But often it can come to like a huddle within Slack every Monday, or some of the random, coffee chat during lunchtime or lunch chat during lunchtime as well, something ad hoc, just to check in how the team is feeling, and also having a bit of cheering up and have a bit of a Q&A if anything. So that's something I think I tend to do, and I can observe my colleague, other design leads tend to do as well along the way to support the team better.
Amazing. Siray, I've learned so much today. This chat has been so insightful. I appreciate it. And I think anyone that's, I guess, trying to improve their internal process, there's so many takeaways here for anyone. So I think, no, first of all, I just really appreciate your time today. And let's say if anyone has any more questions, can they just reach out to you? Best place via LinkedIn?
Yes, definitely. I'm really open and also really willing to help out if I could, and to the design community, because as you can see, a lot of the methods and ideas that I got from is from the community themselves as well.
Yeah. Well, sharing is caring, right? So I think why
Exactly.
bother try and reinvent the wheel if someone's already worked out something that's going to work? And I think it sounds like you've tried multiple processes that other people use and they just didn't work for you, your team, and the company. So I think, yeah, I think learning from your experience has been amazing. So I appreciate the sharing.
Thank you so much, Joe.
My pleasure.